internalized shame is the most powerful form of oppression that exists. And the only reason that I'm able to speak today is that in Buddhism, it's called bodhicitta. My desire to get out of suffering, the causes of suffering, get others out of suffering, is stronger than my shame.
Orgasmic meditation, or OM, is a practice that combines mindfulness and sexual wellness. It involves a structured, timed session where one partner gently strokes the clitoris of the other partner for 15 minutes, with the focus on sensation and connection rather than reaching orgasm. OM aims to enhance awareness and presence and intimacy, promoting a deeper connection between partners and greater sexual and emotional well-being. Hello, everyone. It's Christine Marie Mason, your host for the Rose Woman podcast. And today I have a treat for you, Nicole Daedone, philosopher in Buddhist meditation, in sexual wellness, and in many more things, and the author of the currently 4-volume series, the Eros Sutras, soon to be more. A woman who I met many years ago when she was running an experimental center in San Francisco, teaching people how to come into more depth and awareness of their body through a particular practice called Orgasmic Meditation. We start by talking about the origin of this practice.
I had planned to be a nun. You know, so much of everything in my life, from college where I taught women's studies to all the way through Buddhist practice and psychedelics, and then I wanted to get to the seed of suffering. There was something that just was driven. And I saw so much suffering, so much unnecessary suffering. So initially, Buddhism looked like that was the most sophisticated way of, getting out of suffering, the causes of suffering, and helping others. And then, I met a guy at a party, and he introduced me to this practice. He was a Buddhist, and when he introduced me to the practice, I knew immediately that was it. Now I know, I entered the mystical state, and that's considered the holy grail of consciousness. That's where psychedelics bring you flow states. But I didn't know that at the time. I just knew that I had hit the place where suffering could end. And I knew that very, very specifically, as a woman, this was a door for me.
So he was training in these mystical techniques. Would you have considered that Tantra, or did it have another name?
At the time, it was much more just, neutral. And it was also, it wasn't quite Om at that point. I definitely geared it toward women. But he and he was a practitioner himself, Zen. He did yoga, and then this practice. But this was the one that stuck for me.
So how did you take it from this initial experiential embodied sense of the mystic into a formal practice? What was that process like of developing it?
I started studying with various people who had been practicing for 30 years. It was a kind of backwoods tribal kind of oral history practice at the time, and there were a lot of women, and a lot of women really guided me through the practice. And then, little bit by little bit, I would say, I'm not sure that works for me exactly as a woman. And so I began just noting the things that didn't. And I had a pretty strong background in Buddhism, and I understood immediately that this had to be an attention training practice rather than a sexual practice, that it would have to be the sexual energies were driving the attention, and that's how you would be using it in a way that provided a powerful breakthrough.
Yeah, and even the refinement of the technique, it sounds like, was by paying exquisite attention as you were experiencing it and not just taking others' training. I have to say I'm caught a little bit in this romantic idea of underground transmission, like oral transmission, woman to woman. That's very beautiful.
Right. It's stunningly powerful. For me, everything about my education and having it be that these women came together and just passed it on from one woman to the next, and the amount of care and a deep understanding of what only women can understand. I think that part of that's why I have the confidence that I have. I have this conviction that this is the way, but that's because I've lived it, and I've lived it with women who had the resilience that could work with these energies.
Well, you have a lot of resilience. I want to say, I read the first 2 of the Eros Sutras. Kindle's a little challenged because the whole book is highlighted and it doesn't know what to do with it.
Oh.
I'm going through there like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Ah! They're so good.
Mm.
They're so good.
Hmm.
Really deep work. I was telling
Mm.
Eli the other day in our pre-call that I think you and Sophie Strand are probably the top two female philosophers that I can point to working right now. And this one is just it's so comprehensive, and you introduce so much of your own language that captures subtle, like just exactly the right flavor of something that was not named previously. So I would love to sort of start with talking a little bit about the books themselves, and sort of your path to taking all of that prior study, and then what is it, a 14 years of practicum with the Om community?
17.
17 years. And then coming back around to actually putting it into these really beautiful books, like to encapsulate. And what was that process like? And
It was interesting, my background is in semantics, and I have a determination to find a way to use language in a dynamic way that so often language is static, and so there's a way that it takes something perishable, and what's magical is the perishable quality, and so it takes that and then it cans it, and then you've lost the meaning, then it moves, then all of a sudden it's conceptual as opposed to a felt sense, something like poetry, or anything literary. Sophie Strand, for example, the message is how it's said is as important as what's being said, I think. And by the same token, I was very clear that these were incredibly foreign concepts and experiences. I wanted to tell it from the viewpoint of the feminine, whereas usually the feminine's being described. And so a lot of my background is in feminine language, and so to write books in that language, as opposed to putting it in conventional broadcast English, was a challenge, because I had practiced for many years prior to OneTaste even. And so then all of those years I would just take notes, because what begins to happen, and this is what I wish for every woman, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's called your experience guru. Your experience guru wakes up, and you have access to wisdom and information that nobody could give you, and it's in the moment, and this internal mathematics of the body and being communicates itself in real time. And so it was just many years of taking those notes. Oh wait, actually this is how it works. Oh, when you stroke this spot on the clitoris at this, with this intensity, it opens up this part of the mind. And so to my mind, that's the most powerful thing you can give a human being, is a cartography of the interior world.
when you were doing that, at what point did you enroll other women in testing whether your experience was universal?
That was from the beginning. That was the aim of OneTaste. Yeah, that was, all of us agreed to share our notes. We took copious notes in terms of the experiences we were having, what worked, and it was really important for me to know what didn't work.
Right.
For example, I've done a lot of masculine practice in masculine traditions, and a lot of those experiences don't translate to me as a woman. My question is always, is it true? Is it always true? Where is it not true? And where is it true for me as a woman? And that cuts out a lot of a lot of universal truths.
So you're in this process, you've identified it in yourself, you've gotten together with other women, you're comparing your notes on what works and what doesn't, and this practice emerges. And then it feels to me like you enter one doorway of attention and quality of focus, and then there's a whole new universe. And then it keeps unlayering and going deeper and deeper into the attention sphere. That's what I observed in the short period that I was practicing with you. And I wonder, yeah, just like all these terroirs, sort of within that sensation.
That's part of the reason why I love the practice, is that often in our culture there's this sense of insufficiency. There's just not enough, and there's something there's an underlying craving or yearning for more of something, we don't know what. And in the practice, there's such a ground of sufficiency, and then endless potential. The experience is that these doors open, and they open in a very accelerated way. The science for example, shows that the practice, 15-minute practice, you hit the brain signature of a 30-year Tibetan practitioner. And so these doors that for me, and I love Zen still, and I really love Tibetan Buddhism, but doors that would take me weeks, years, months to open can open in a single Om, and then you're there with the rich salient material. And so that the first thing that happens is that sense of insufficiency just dissolves, and then it becomes an exploration as opposed to filling a need.
Yeah, there's a sense of floating
Right.
in a very unified state. It's very beautiful. So you're writing these books. When did you begin the process of really trying to catalyze and turn them into this series of, I don't know what you call them, volumes? Are they volumes? Yeah,
Mhm.
they're volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, into this series of books.
Mm.
Because it feels like it's like they've been kind of cooking for a long time, but then they all of a sudden, boom, we're all out simultaneously. So
That's
how
it.
did that, how did that happen?
I often talk about
I
it.
was like, wait a minute, there was only one book up here last week and now there's four. How did that happen?
That's exactly how it was. I talk about it like, I had to deliver all the kittens, and they just kept coming. So, I had spent really a good 17 years writing the sutras, in my ambient attention, and then writing, notes about the sutras. As it happens, calamity hit. And when calamity hit, the force of it was enough to knock me clear enough to lock down and write. And so I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would go until I was shaking at 9 o'clock at night, go to bed and do it again, go to bed and do it again. So in a 4-year period of time, I put out, there'll be more coming soon. There's 4 primary volumes, and then there's 2 esoteric or advanced volumes that are coming. So in 4 years, I put those out. They just kept rolling. At that point, there's a term for divine dictation. It was a sense of almost divine dictation, where something was just coming through that it was so urgent it had to make it to the page.
Yeah, I felt that. I would use the word channel, but channel always has this implication that it's coming from somewhere else, and that's not right. Divine dictation plus divine dictation coupled with your already sort of pre-fertilized consciousness from the practice, and from knowing it firsthand. I can imagine that sense of urgency. Did you have a feeling of that being an emergent process, or was it driven by something else? Was there any fear in it or anxiety in it, or were you just like fluid?
It's interesting. So in Om, one of the things that we say is pain is an interpretation of pressure. And so you learn to work with the mind to receive all pressures in the practice. So was there fear? I don't know, but there was definitely pressure. And so there was this sense of, I just had a stark understanding of how profoundly what I was saying from the feminine perspective would be misunderstood, and how urgent it is to get sovereign or self-possessed feminine voice into the world, that because everything is held up against this masculine metric of whether or not it's true, whether or not it's important, valid, valuable. And no, this is a perfectly complementary operating system to the rational system that is, I would say, even more effective. This is where you're tapping into eudaimonia and genius. It's just that we don't understand it, so it looks transgressive or dangerous or scary. No, it's not. Sexual energies aren't scary. It's that we don't learn how to harness them well. But when you do, they're the most effective energies in the world, for both for healing and for evolution of consciousness.
They're the life force energy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So in that context, first of all, I love the idea of it being whatever not naming the pressure with a good or a bad or any kind of a judgment, but just letting it transmute into potency. That's so beautiful. And I wish that for everybody on every project you're doing this week, that whatever's happening, you just whoosh, change it into life force.
And know that that's possible. That's part of what I would say to every person on the planet. There's this notion that something happens, and implicit or inherent in that something, that condition, is a response. No, you have a pause, and in that pause, you can turn and create. You can employ that creative force, and then everything that happened to you, not to sound cheesy, but it starts happening for you.
That's one of those things that has gotten a little cliched, but is essentially the most potent place to live. You're essentially in your power then. This pause between the stimulus and the response, or the cause and effect, that we've like internalized and created a pattern around, is not necessarily true.
Yeah.
So in the context of the series, what does Eros mean?
The simplest way to describe it for me is that which connects. Because really what you're learning to do is see the interconnection or interweaving or interpenetration of life rather than the separation. And so what brings that about? And so it's a magnetizing force.
You had sort of in contrast, like it's not really the erotic mind. Did you say the erotic mind?
I did. Yes.
The erotic mind, how is that different from the normal Western operating system?
The discursive mind, the conceptual thought. So it's, the beauty of the erotic mind is that chatter that's always happening has dissolved that sense of self-consciousness. And then it feels that you've tapped into something eternal and you have access. In high intensity sports or in flow, it's called to the voice. A single voice of clarity emerges. And so that sense that we were kind of scrambling in everyday life and locked behind this insulation of thoughts, that dissolves and a pristine clarity enters.
I think that stands in contrast to what you then call the tumescent mind.
Absolutely. And the tumescent mind is really what I wish everyone, how about for me, as soon as I understood tumescence, everything shifted. And I worked with Eckhart Tolle's editor, and he was saying, that was the piece that I wish everybody understood, is this tumescence. And for two reasons. One is there's a natural flow in your body, a creative flow. So you have an idea, you want to say, like, you want to write a story, but there's something blocking it. And then that block causes a certain pressure or tension. And then within that tension, there's a, discursive thought, and the thoughts just keep going around in your head and the pressure gets bigger and bigger. That's called tumescence, and it happens from anything that wants to be expressed. The gospel of that which you expressed will be your salvation, and that which you don't will be your destruction. That's the basic idea, is that there is this energy, and we have this idea that we can block it or stop it or send it in a direction other than it wants to go, but that locks in your body. And so to learn to operate according to these deeper rhythms in your body, that's actually what brings not just peace and joy, but brings a profound creativity and a resilience and resourcefulness in the mind. So everything that was working against you is now working in your favor. All of that congestion gets converted. And so we have this idea, though, the best you can do with this congestion is rest. And the best you can do is just hope that it eventually drains out. No, there's actually a process where you can take all of that congestion and convert it and use it as fuel for creativity. And that, to me, is what's so hopeful about tumescence. Exactly what's stagnant and dead inside of you can be enlivened and then can be used for whatever purpose you wish.
Yeah, I think when I'd only heard that word in the context of swollen genitals, like if a man getting hard on or
Right.
like nipples or something.
Right.
But I loved it when it was put in the context of the mind, because it has that same thing of like constantly seeking satisfaction. Like it needs a release. It needs a release.
That's it.
And then I started watching my mind doing that. Like, oh, it wants to grasp onto something. I'll have an impulse and I have to write it down. I go, yeah. And in Vipassana, that was so evident. You could see how the mind, without some way to lance the tumescence,
Yes.
would like lose it. Like, oh.
Yes.
So was genius to see how many tools you could identify that the tumescent mind has sort of baked into its kit, like to protect you from the erotic.
Right. Oh, that's so well said. That's like the punchline of life's joke is is that your own ego is protecting you from freedom and joy in a certain way, and then it's like a puzzle. How do you find your way through it, into that vast open space?
I had a good quote on this from your book. Wait, let me see if I can find it. You said, identity is to the human mind what homeostasis is to the body.
That's true. That's true. It is
And
automated.
that feels like one of those tumescence tools right there.
That really is. And then, see, that's another one that changed my life, is understanding that the mind rejects intense bad as often as it rejects intensely positive experiences. Both destabilize the mind. And so then you can begin to see, oh, I sabotage myself, or there is no self and there is no I, but sabotaging happens to protect this artificial identity, even in terms of the things that I most deeply desire.
Yeah, here's one related to that. You said, when our identity is threatened by good, it's because something that has occurred that goes radically against its conception of who the identity believes we are. Good can take many forms, from a sudden increase in intimacy between two people to self-actualization and purpose. And I think that was amazing that the mind also stops you from going deeper into the good. It's not just trying to protect you from shame and other things that feel bad.
Oh, no, 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 no. We have this women's movement, and at the foundation of the women's movement, the greatest challenge is in Tibetan Buddhism, it's what's called Vajra pride, but this sense of rightness of being, or one sense of value in such a way that we pick up the mantle of our birthright. It's far more difficult to have women own the inestimable power that we have than it is for us to find 150,000 problems and what's wrong with us. That's easy. But that one place where we flash on, oh wait, we're the ones who hold the power. We hold the power. And that the only challenge we really face, the fundamental challenge, not the only challenge, there are peripheral problems that are as a result of not getting the seed of, we are the ones who hold the power. Because that goes directly against our artificial identity.
Yeah, my identity, or one's identity, can be very caught up in sort of the accomplishment of the daily tasks or meeting the culture's view of you. And then you sit into that potent seat in the heart and there's nothing wrong and you become very uncontrollable.
Ungovernable, we say. Exactly. Yeah.
Ungovernable.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another thing. Here's another topic. Our existence contains both a universal quality of perfection and a desire for further evolution.
Right.
So can you expand on that a little bit?
You're perfect with room to grow. I know. That's really the foundation of erotic philosophy and a higher Tibetan Buddhism, as well as this notion of this is perfect with room to grow. And I tell the story sometimes of, I did this this ridiculous, but it was good. It was the most powerful thing in my life. But it was funny because you argue against your perfection. And for me, there were 3 teachers and they argued for it. And they made this joke every time they win. And so, I sat and it was 4 hours. I mean, I really gave it everything I had. And so I argued, oh, I'm obsessive. And so they said, oh, that's such an incredible quality. When you apply that to your life's purpose, that's going to take you all the way to the end. And, oh, okay. Well, I'm and I was Buddhist at the time. So I'm extraordinarily reactive, which is a big no-no. And I'm too passionate and too dramatic. And, oh, well, if you drove all of that passion toward the vision of what you want life to be and what you want this world to be, you could change the world. Oh, okay. Well, I like to party. I really like to party. And they said, okay, well then after that we can go out, we can get a Jack Daniels or something. And they just kept turning it. And they gave me this Rosetta Stone about how to begin to turn the conceptual mind, to turn it, to see everything in this positive light. And then you don't have any obstacles. And then from there you can just create. So, and then back to the woman's story, was so funny is there was a necklace on the table. And as soon as you flashed, and there was an actual flash, there was a moment of, wait a minute, they're right. I'm perfect. Then you get to wear the necklace. And so I looked over at them like, oh, I had the flash. And I looked over. And then they just looked back at me. And then I realized, oh, I have to claim it for myself. I have to
Oh,
pick it up
beautiful.
and put it on myself. Yeah. And that to me is really what I see as a foundation of what there is to move through and to live that as well.
So, in accepting the perfection, I might still be able to trace a place that is not quite unwound in myself and grow, but I don't make it wrong. I don't judge it.
Right. To my mind, everything is a nascent form, either an evolved form or a nascent form of that will become something beautiful. And I like this idea that in astrology, how they'll say this is the dark side of a Virgo. I'm a Virgo. Um, we're fussy. The dark side of a Virgo and the exalted side. And so the dark side is really what wants to evolve into the exalted side. So like I love bossy women. I think they're fantastic because they can move things and shake things up. Okay, so the B side of that kind of woman is she's going to be a little bit bossy with you. So it's really how you hold it in order to keep this in order to keep things flowing. Because the biggest challenge to all spiritual practice is contraction. It's that place where there's a judgment and you either contract to grasp and hold out of craving, or you grasp to reject or, fight. Those are the two things. And they keep the body locked. That stops all flow. And then everything that you're here to do, you can't do. You're in that contraction. So whatever opens that space is valuable.
Yeah, I think the contraction, the way that it keeps you in the separation mindset is the hardest thing in evolution. And that your book and some of the other pieces that I've seen over the last few years, Thomas Hubel's work on collective trauma, they're all talking about holding more of the experience, holding more of the pain and the light, and like just being able to stay in the feeling, open to feeling fully. And you write a lot about that in different ways through the book.
I'm a rebel in a certain way, not in a conventional way, but I do not like anything to control my mind, including my own mind.
Ooh.
so, so I don't want it to be that pain has control over me, or fear or anger. And so then how do you begin to work with it so that it doesn't control you or move you or take you off course at any time in any way? Oh, well, it just so happens that there's one universal method that works, and that's to open and give it space. Suzuki Roshi said, if you want to tame a cow, give it a wide pasture. And all of these negative experiences are cows, we'll say, and then the wide pasture is the open mind. When you put pain in an open mind, it is so incredibly powerful, intimate. Pain is a very intimate experience. To begin to have the white lightning, because pain has a white lightning, just kind of a bolt experience when you allow it in, and the clarity that it brings in the mind and the body, and then to sit with what you've spent this lifetime and other lifetimes rejecting, and to open, and suddenly there's this feeling of intimacy, no longer rejecting your own experience.
Mm. Oh, I can so feel that.
Yeah.
You speak of it in also in terms of approval and unconditionality. Like I'm going to be in the pain and have the actual sensation without pushing, judging it or pushing it away.
Right.
This approval quality is kind of life changing, like blessing everything that arises.
It is. It changed my life for sure. I was taught, I was an academic, so I was taught that discrimination was key and judgment was power. And so to actually reclaim, and it's a deeply feminine practice, the power of approval, the power of opening, the symbol being for feminine practice, when we can open the genitals, for example, a baby can come out. So there's a lot that you can withstand when you can open. And so then to practice approval rather than judgment in that moment, and rather than being killed with 100 little paper cuts of contractions of judgment, to begin to open in that place. And it shifts not just me, it shifts everything around me. First of all, be my own friend to my emotions and my experiences, and to not determine, which experience gets to come in and which one doesn't, is a very, that's a profound experience, especially because everyone right now seems to feel so alienated and like they don't belong. They don't belong to themselves. We have to learn how to belong to ourselves, and not in a big platitude, I gave myself self-love. Okay, so what are the mechanics of self-love? Well, self-love is approving of this experience right now and being with it. This experience right now and being with it. It's just a moment by moment being with. That's what self-love is. It's attention. It translates to attention. So to be able to do that, and then that affords a luxury of attention. Then you can turn it outward. And for example, we have this program we do, we turn prisons into monasteries, or we have another program called Free Food, and we do free Michelin star meals for people who are food challenged. And so we get a lot of activity, a lot of different expressions of human beings that are often rejected. And one of the biggest things that we found, one of the foundational elements of the program, is we say we feed people dignity. That's what we're feeding first. But to approve of what has been rejected in these people, to be spacious enough to allow all of their expressions, it naturally comes into its right form. And then we get to see who that person wanted to be, rather than a reactive version of I'll show you, or I really need attention. You just give quality, sustained, direct attention. That's really what approval is, irrespective of behavior, and things take right form.
So you do that within yourself and within your intimates and within the culture and with anything that's rejected.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And then, there are these math elements that people don't see. Oh, anything you reject, it may just leave the frame of your vision, but it doesn't leave. If you take people incarcerated people, they're just warehoused right over there. That's still in your reality. And so it seems incumbent upon us to transform anything we possibly can. And really this metabolizing factor of dignity seems to be at the foundation.
Yeah, anything that you want to warehouse and push out, whether it's prisons or old folks' homes or whatever.
Right.
In my own experience, like let's say there's someone in my field that I'm super attracted to, and I know it's never going to be consummated. Like it's just not feasible that it's going to be consummated. And so I'm like mad at myself for wanting them. And I'm just change your mind, look at something else, think about something else. And finally I'm like, actually, I really do feel super attracted to this person. And instead of trying to not, because, too mess in mind, I'm going to go ahead and just like feel my Eros, feel my energy. And then all of a sudden, like I can be like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of flow going on there. Wow. That person may never respond to it, but I'm responding to it. It's pretty great.
Right?
Yeah. And then I'm walking around on this like beautiful edge of like I'm so alive with that, like that tingle. And maybe I don't ever want them to like actually satisfy. I don't want to scratch that itch now because I'm feeling very awake.
Right. Well, so you just described the malady and amending of the female condition. So beautifully, because we were trained very early on to reject any form of appetite, food, desire, erotic, sexual, any kind, or even our desire or yearning for love. There's some way that at the minute of arousal, it hits this lid of shame or humiliation or embarrassment, and then we try to manage it. We try to manage it by contracting again. So now you have a state of arousal opening up and out, and then this contraction around it, and then we feel pressure. And what you just described is exactly how to use that for your benefit. Oh, you feel the arousal, just approve of it. Just approve of it. It doesn't have to go anywhere.
Just approve of it. Yeah. Feel your feeling. Feel it all the way.
Exactly. Then it's delight. Then it feels good. Then it's richness, right?
I don't even have to write any longing minor chord songs.
Right.
I can just like be in it. Not turn it into a big drama. God.
Although it is good fodder for writing for sure. I can
It
tell
is,
you I
yeah.
have books. Yeah. But it's yours. And so the other thing we say is turn in the direction of the skid. So something happens that is not necessarily in alignment with your idea of who you are. You feel arousal for somebody who, say, isn't your partner, if you have a partner. And so our tendency is to want to, like you said, just yank it in the other direction. And no, you just go in and you just feel it. You just move in the direction that it's moving. We have this terror that we're going to be dragged if we allow ourselves to feel our desire, we'll be dragged. No, that's just a backlog of desire. But when you open it, you let it flow, then all of a sudden it takes its right place. When I first started training in the practice, there was a woman who had practiced for, I don't know, 25 years or something. And she had gone through the graduation version of the practice and called a demo. And I said, "Oh, what will it be like after the demo?" And she said, "Oh, sex will take its right place in your body. It won't be too big. It won't be too little. It won't drive you. You won't have to repress it. It'll just take its right natural place."
Yeah, I have to go through. I might initially go through what you describe in the book, shame and pride and all those other things that you hit, what that fear of not being met in your desire, and then you meet yourself. It's really potent.
Really potent. And, for me, I think there have been, like I said, door upon door upon door upon door. But one of the things that I discovered is after really meeting myself and a certain kind of intimacy with myself, a protective shield that I had kept around my desire because I was so afraid of feeling this fundamental disappointment. I didn't want to feel a disappointment. My friend Ed Brown, he's a Zen teacher. He said, the most difficult human emotion to experience is disappointment. And it's funny because you'd think it would be all of this deep grief. No, it's that moment of, it didn't work. I wasn't met. And so this layer develops to protect us from it. And with a lot of that layer in me dissolved. And wow, I discovered, that was blocking people and creating the outcome I most feared because there would be a certain risk I wouldn't take. There would be certain things I didn't say because I was locked behind that membrane. So,
Which almost guaranteed not being met.
that's right. And then the only thing that's satisfied is my ego. See, I knew it. I knew it would never work. Yeah,
I knew it.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, that's very sad.
Right?
Oh, sorry. I accepted being sad also.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's a cruel kind of self-protection is a very cruel con game.
Since we're on desire, this part of the book where you said the voice of desire is always affirmative, even when it's saying no.
Right.
Desire is always for us and with us, and it's never about anything other than this moment. If it's a grand vision or about who or what we are to become, it's not desire, because desire is economical in its communication. Turn left, go deeper, listen here. I'd love to hear more about that.
There's the great imposter, which is craving or grasping.
Ooh.
that that we often, or attachment that we call desire. It's funny because that's actually what blocks true desire, because true desire is alive, so dynamic, magnetic experience. It could be akin to karma that moves you in a way that maintains a basic sufficiency, a basic sense of well-being, a basic sense of joy. But it goes against often. Jung talks about our most cherished notions. It goes against my most cherished notion of who I am often. Oh, wait a minute. I'm attracted to that? No, I'm only attracted to that. So all of so to begin to move in accord with the deeper desire begins to evolve me in ways I never could have done. Ever. I would have never chosen a lot of these things except for I had activated my desire in such a way that I could follow it.
Do you find, are there simple ways to determine whether it's a craving or a pattern or a true desire? How do you know? Do you know in your body?
Well, I think it's probably the simplest is your breathing. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. There's a feeling of again, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's the bliss body is enlivened. So there's a feeling of easeful electricity. You feel at once enlivened and alive, but it's a relaxed sense of being enlivened. And then if it's attachment, there's that excitement. Excitement often passes for true arousal or true desire, but it's arousal. Excitement is arousal plus contraction, and the contraction is I'm going to steer this in the direction I want to go, no matter what. Not what's the most beneficial in the broader view.
Yeah, it's kind of like a restlessness.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Grr.
Yeah. Yeah.
The feeling of inviting an erotic lifestyle, like I'm going to bring this into the boardroom, I'm going to bring this into my housekeeping, I'm going to bring this into my finances. Can you live into that? Is that a real possibility?
Well, that's what I've spent my life trying. Here's what happened for me. I was just talking about this yesterday because I had a certain awakening, and in that awakening, I understood both what it was like to feel a foundation of joy, the foundation of joy, basic goodness, and that how you continued to live that was to show others the experience, right? Get out of suffering, causes suffering, help others get out of suffering, or enter flourishing, the conditions of flourishing, and show others how to flourish. That's really the foundation that's the math for how to live well. So then, whoa, okay, this world is not designed for that. The everything from our conception of how to heal to how to relate with another human being. We have this idea that form trumps truth. So there may be a truth between us, something that's something that truly wants to happen, but we have these forms that have, laws built into them of I I'll be monogamous, I won't be monogamous, and that don't flow with the truth of who I am. So that's why you see divorce. That's why you see things broken. The form we've created forms that have to break, so that if what's true for me transitions, I can't be in that intimate relationship with you anymore, which makes no sense to me. So I had this realization, the way things are set up don't correspond to the truth of who we are. Okay, the only option is to set to changing those things. That's so. Oh, okay. So that's what our ideas around food are nuts, or our ideas around the soil, they're nuts, and you have to have all of it. Joanna started a company called Organic Erotic, and it's how to have rooms feel the way you would want them to feel in order to emerge in them as a woman. Or so just to begin to build that reality, so that the old reality that's based on nothing from the neck down, that can be obsolete and just die away.
Yeah, that this invites a whole line of thinking about how structures all ossify really quickly. Like you want stability, you want predictability, you want to make sure that the marriage holds, that the house is safe, but nothing's ever safe. And it's all like an avoidance of this fundamental, the difficulty of being in what's emergent. And then the whole culture, the whole society will collapse. How terrible. But if you actually had the skills to deal with it, you would be continually evolving the society. And I just love the invitation to that.
That's it. Exactly. If you had the creative mind that could meet the truth of reality, which is always emergent, that shifts it. I always say, that shifts it from hell to heaven, because then it is fascinating to work with in the moment and to be with it. The same way, I write many hours a day. It's fascinating to turn a word and figure out how to move a sentence. It's interesting when you're in it. But most people don't give themselves the luxury of being in their own lives. And so then the thought of not having these artificial structures of security is terrifying, because if you're living outside of your life and there's a certain element of autopilot that you're trying to operate on, well, you need to know at all times that there's, safety, 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 but you don't realize, the fundamental safety. Rick Hansen wrote a book called The Buddha's Brain. He talks about the neuroscience of our coping mechanisms, and they're in direct opposition to what reality is. Reality is dynamic, it's intense, and there's no fixity, there's no self in it. But the minute you get impacted, you go to a sense of self, you try to lock things down, and you try to bring the intensity down. It's in opposition to what nature is.
Right. So that you're back to feeling everything that you can feel, being able to hold more, paying exquisite attention to what's happening now and taking it second by second. And then what happens? You might then get a lull where you can enjoy your garden or whatever,
That's
you know?
I can tell. How about this? I can vouch for this. So, I have some duress in my life. We all do, but I
I
have.
heard that. I heard that rumor. I heard that rumor. I also heard that we weren't allowed to talk about that. So,
Well, we'll
my
talk about.
condolences.
I don't know. I don't know. All I know is there's some.
You have a little stress in your life.
When
Enough
when
said.
when you're a sexual woman who aims to bring a sexual practice into the world, there can be some challenges. We'll say that. And
Actually, it's right on the heels of this. You're promoting an emergent, unstructured thing, and it's hitting right up against the ossified structures of what existed. It's exactly what we're just talking about. So,
exactly.
oh well, hard to be a change agent.
And I'm a happy person in the midst of it. It's not in spite of it. It's not because of it. It's in the midst of it, because I have muscle memory of being happy. And so you find it. But it's only here. I can't look up. I cannot look 5 minutes into the future, but right here, it's here, and it continues to be. And that to me is, if I would have really, well, I must have heard it somewhere, because I decided to dedicate my life to that, and that's available for everybody. It's not some pie in the sky thing. It's not like I'm living in a cave with no duress whatsoever, saying, no, it's possible, you can find peace. No, in the middle of calamity, you can have it.
Yeah, I've been in the Indian traditions for 25 years, and I really loved Advaita Vedanta from a certain perspective. But it's a woman's Advaita. It's non-dual with an emergent and manifest reality. It's through my hands. It's through raising my kids. It's through building companies. I've got to experience the non-dual reality in materiality. And I was like, all these guys, like what's his name? Descartes. I heard this thing that he was like an old rich white guy who had servants doing everything, and he was like very dissipated. And what am I about? Oh, it must be because I think therefore I am. I'm like, that's only because you have everybody else dealing with the problems of your embodiment. They're all cooking for you and like
Right.
cleaning for you and ironing your clothes, and like go out and do something with your body, and you might define yourself more in relational field. Like you have relationships, therefore you are, or you make things, therefore you are,
Right.
or I don't know.
Right. I just want to say that I love that you said, what's his name? Descartes. That in itself is gold.
He's just, unfortunately, still
Yeah.
dominating the way we think what we are and who we are.
We have a lot of momentum in that direction.
I think this is a great place to segue into another one of your topics, which is the insidious damage of playing the victim, or being a victim, being in victim consciousness, which I think is heavily in the tumescent mind.
Yeah, oh, for sure. There's this quote, there comes a point where what was once the solution becomes the problem. And a combination of fixity, the tendency to contract, and pain, if I feel pain, and in that moment I feel the pain and ouch, and oh, that hurts. Okay, that's healthy. But when there's a contraction around it in such a way that it becomes an identity, and then the identity develops its own immune responses to relaxing into the bigger self that will end the suffering, then it's terrible. And then when a culture begins to support that, we call it giving second terminal. When a culture, there's this great, it's one of my favorite videos. There's a child, and the mom's holding the child. And so the mom walks past this door, and the mom hits the door. So the child thinks that it hit the door, right? And so the child starts to cry. And you see the mom, the mom tries two different responses. One is the child starts to cry and the mom holds the child and kind of plays with the child like, isn't that so much fun what we just did? And gives that way to contextualize the experience the child just had. And then the other is the mom panics and brings a certain level of anxiety to that response. How we respond to each other in various situations, yes, first, foremost, no matter what, wherever there's pain, wherever there's suffering, bring compassion. But it's important to remember that the 5 phases of compassion are peace, increase, power, wrath, and activity. That is, at a certain point, the ability to cut through the idea that somebody is locked in this identity for all time is vital. You want to free your friend of the notion that they're permanently disabled because of an experience. That doesn't mean that the experience wasn't painful. It doesn't mean that it wasn't real. It means that any identity, all identity, no matter what it is it offers you a promise it will never deliver on. The promise all identity offers is I'll protect you from pain, when instead what it does is it becomes a membrane that locks the pain in.
Yeah, no, continue. I found this whole section of the book, by the way, the resentment section and the section on being on victim, so amazing. Like the entire chapter, sutra, I guess. Particularly this piece of if you allow people, yourself or others, to stay in their victim mindset and you play into it and you sort of like drip feed that. I think you said if they are capable of doing something themselves, and you do it for them or you try to rescue them, that is actually doing harm. Not it's just not like just neutral. It's actually causes harm.
Oh yeah, you're robbing a human. So we have, as I said, prisons to monasteries, and one of the most powerful things that I heard in that experience was during COVID, the prison was shut down, and these women had been making things for other people, and they had been contributing to the community. And when COVID hit, these women weren't allowed to leave their cells, so they couldn't make the things that allowed them to contribute into the world. The woman who was our liaison said they hit a deep state of collective depression because they couldn't contribute. As human beings, we're built for this kind of circulation of taking in and putting out. And so to take away somebody's ability to do what they can do robs them of basic dignity. And dignity is what gives you that Vajra pride. It's what gives you the resilience to withstand, the difficulties, the burdens of life, the tugs and the pulls of life.
Well, if you get the book, which I'm sure a lot of you will be reading this from cover to cover, and if you could join a study group or something where you could go through these and really understand in depth what they would mean for your life, if you believe things like that, like really saw how contribution is the essence of participation and belonging, or you saw things like you can experience resentment-free states of consciousness and how your victim consciousness is a form of powerless power, and sort of owning those things in yourself. Like each one of these, Nicole, is like worthy of like letting it land in your body and then using that lens as a little tool to go around and search inside yourself for where that's alive in you and then to release it. It's such a beautiful map.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that. I just think so much of the game is rigged, where you're taught to lie to yourself in your own voice that what's harming you is helping you. The idea that my holding on to any kind of resentment about anything is affecting anybody other than me. I mean, it may, and that I might be a little bit of a skunk with my resentment, but really that it's the toxic off gassing from my own body that makes that happen. That I deserve. See, the idea is, I deserve to have this resentment. No, you deserve so much more than that. You deserve the vast open space of your mind where you can breathe. That's what you deserve.
And joy.
Right. The ground of joy.
Well, here you are. What is this, 30 years into this leadership position and advancing the frontiers of sexuality and authenticity and essence?
Yep, that's it. 30 years.
Oh my God. And you've got a lot of experience in being received in speaking to sexuality in general and to women's pleasure and to the integration of the body and the spirit into one conversation. Where are you received accurately and where do you feel you're projected upon? I mean, what are you noticing in terms of the breadth of responses to you?
That's a great question. I tend to know where people are coming from if they know what I do by how they respond to me. There's so much klesha. There's so much fog around the idea of sexuality that the projections are immediate, and it's everything from "Oh goddess, who I bow to," to evil harlot. The whole range is there, or duplicitous or manipulative. There's a whole series of ideas that we have around sexuality itself, and that we then have around a woman who's sexual, and they're so baked in, we don't necessarily know that they're there. And then I do believe I think the same way that men look at women in our culture, women look at our own sexuality. And so to be able to own it for ourselves is a very difficult and profound act, to be able to treat our sexuality the way we would want men to treat us, not as a distraction, not as something that will block us from getting to the place we want to go, not as something that's crazy or dangerous. All of the things that are put on a woman, we put on our own sexuality. So that being said, I don't. I finally hit the point. I don't know. There are so many projections that are put on me at this point that I don't know. I don't pay attention. I don't lift my head. I just look at it as what will bring benefit in this moment. What will bring, and that's all I'm interested in. What will have it be that the being who is here can connect with that person? Is it possible? If it is, that's what I'm in for.
Yeah, using it all. You're using it all.
Right. So we have this science, right? And in the science, like the third top neuroscientist in the world, another neuroscientist from USC, MIT, and in it, they say it's one of the most effective potential protocols for trauma. So I can tell you that 20 years ago, I sat in scientists' offices and tried to explain to them that, no, you need to understand this works. This is healing. That diddling thing. And there's so much being dismissed or ignored or thought crazy. And I think that that's a woman's practice. I think that as a woman, there's something I know that I fundamentally know. So my work is to not deny it, and it's not to force it in a way that it won't be heard, but to never stop.
Yeah. You know what? Thank you. Thank you for never stopping, for your bravery and resilience and doing it anyway. I'm remembering back in the 80s when mindfulness or meditation was just coming into collective consciousness before it had been the purview of, hippies. And there was maybe somebody at the Amrit Desai's place, Kripalu, really began this process of doing studies in conjunction with research institutions on what meditation did. And then they put those monks in those neuro attachment, the caps, so that they could measure their brain waves while they were meditating. And I feel like this will be the same thing, that somehow your dominant Western material reality mind needs to point to a study in order to give itself the permission to believe something. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not even that they need the study. They just need the link to the NIH site so that they can go ahead and experience what they're experiencing without the identity of being a rationalist blocking it.
Brilliant. It's exquisitely said. And I had so many misgivings about taking that route because I'm very see for yourself, the Buddha. Just see for yourself. Just try it. See for yourself. But I think at the time of the Buddha, there was a basic understanding and courage in terms of seeing for yourself. And in the West, we don't trust ourselves. We have outsourced our trust to the authorities. So if you actually want to bring something that will bring benefit, you have to You have to go through the mediators of the authorities, one being science, that will say, no, this has already been vetted for you, because people don't know how to trust their experience. They don't necessarily even know what the experience they're having is. We have locked ourselves out of our interior, out of our internal world, that we don't necessarily know our way around. Is this working? Is this not working? When I first had my first my first major afterward, I thought I was having an anxiety attack. And this is one of the places where a woman helped me redefine. And she said, "Oh no, sweetheart, you are just getting turned on." Oh, that's what the experience
Wait,
is.
was she French? Was that supposed to be? Was that French? Of
Right.
course she is, because the French woman would know to say that. She would know.
And so to begin to have an internal lexicon, you first have to trust outside of yourself. Okay, this has been vetted. This is safe.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so where do you see the culture moving around this topic in the next, let's say, the next few decades? What's your internal vision say?
I just wrote an op-ed on this, and this is very much where I'm located. I was born in the summer of love, I say, I was, but that was the time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But it was a profound. It was a time when Eastern practices were being introduced, yoga and meditation, the like, but primarily the masculine form was being introduced. Now it's that many years later. I'm 56, so it's the second round. And I think what's happening is, as sex, drugs, and rock and roll became psychedelics, and then there'll be this sacred form of sexuality. I think we're at the point where you have to use sexual energies to subdue greed, hatred, and delusion. There's nothing else that can. There's nothing strong enough to do that. And so we've kept pushing it, we tried to demonize it. We tried to do all of these things the same way we did when we had the war on drugs. But actually what ended up happening was it got weaponized against African American culture. I think that there'll come a point where we see, there's a war on sex, and it's being weaponized against women having our own. Audre Lorde talks about the fact that Eros is the feminine plane of spirituality. This is our birthright. This is our power, and when we're plugged into it, this is how we'll change the world. And we have the encoding. We have the basic understanding of what it's like to have another human being in our bodies, even if we actually haven't. So there's a way that we understand things with a fundamental empathy, not all and not always, but that could take these sexual energies that have been poorly employed and employed them toward evolving the world into where it wants to be creatively. But right now we're still in the war on sex. That's where we are. And it's insidious, it's everywhere. It's disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I make images because I've got a new book coming out. It's beginning to be serialized. It's the 9 Lives of Women from Birth to 100, sexual, sensual, and reproductive stages from birth to 100. So I'm in Midjourney, this AI image generator, and I'm trying to get some anatomy images. If I put in anatomy, it gives me a default male anatomy.
Interesting.
And when I put in female anatomy, it censored the prompt, wouldn't generate an image for me.
Okay, that is so powerful.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
And that happens on so many layers. I've learned you can't say in generating an image that I want nudes, pinks, tans, browns, because the word nude will, censor it. It will censor it. The algorithm will censor it. And so many other things like that what are the words that I wanted to see? Bipotential gonads as the part of the fetus that just develops into a male or a female. And I want to illustrate bipotential gonads in some way. So I put that into the prompt. You're for sure not getting through with gonads. I just want to tell you. It's just for sure not. But at least that's masculine. Right. But in terms of the war on sex, it's for sure baking into the AI.
That's it. You're seeing the invisible backpack that we all carry around that people don't notice until they notice in this specific way but it's pervasive. It's everywhere. And it's built into the notion that a woman can't have agency or volition.
Well, I was thinking about, since it's pulling on publicly available training data, it calls it imbalanced training data. Is that the problem? Or biased content moderation, or, it's a manifestation of the collective information of all mankind. It's tapping into, so,
That's it.
okay, I get to point to it now. It's not that the AI is wrong. It's that the AI is just showing you how you think. That's how I'm going to use it. Want to know how the culture thinks? Let's prompt it.
That's it. Exactly.
So, war on sex. Another great phrase. Here's some other great phrases. We have climax consciousness. We have psychic adulthood. We have reciprocal consciousness, which is like the play in between. I mean, I understand now that you're a semantician. Amazing wording. Very good words.
Right.
You word good.
I worked hard. I worked hard.
The erotic friend. I mean, if you just want to open up the book and read about the erotic friend, there's so many beautiful little snippets. I'm really happy for you. I'm happy that you are in such a good and deep flow in getting your insights and concepts onto paper for the rest of us. So before we close, I want to talk about the censorship thing with you, if it's okay. Like, what is it like for you to walk in the world where you have to censor yourself when you're all about truth telling and radical honesty?
Well, listen to this. This experience. I mean, I was canceled in a big way, in probably the biggest way you can humanly be canceled. And it's interesting. It is the biggest initiation I think a human being could go through. To be honest, I didn't know at the time, but it has its own beats to it. What the first thing I discovered is the profound sense of desire, human belonging, how that's instinctual. So when I was first canceled, I was in a Buddhist class, and the teacher said, "I want you to think about being falsely accused." I thought, "Oh, I don't have to think that hard." And then they said, "Now feel the sensation in your body. That is your instinctual karma coming alive." And I just felt this intensity. Oh, that's what's being activated. So then everything thereafter taught me about how the instinctual karma was working. One, I didn't want to talk. I wanted to hide. I wanted to go under a table. I didn't want to address anything. I just wanted to apologize. I wanted to be as good as possible. I wanted to become saintly. All of these things. Fast forward, it's been 6.5 years to today, where I want to fly directly into the sun. I want to say everything that I possibly can. There are things that I can and can't say, but anything that I can talk about, because this is what I learned, especially as a woman and especially as a sexual woman. Internalized shame is the most powerful form of oppression that exists. And the only reason that I'm able to speak today is that in Buddhism, it's called bodhicitta. My desire to get out of suffering that causes suffering, get others out of suffering, is stronger than my shame. But it is the whole idea of the scarlet letter. That's real. It's just like you feel shrouded in it for a period of time. And every desire I have to be liked, to be loved, to be accommodating, that's where I say I got sober from the world. I got sober from those conditioned aspects of being a woman, to now is precisely as I can humanly say the most direct and honest thing, I say it. I feel like I've gone up against the most powerful masculine institutions, including spirituality, and said, "Oh no, that's not actually how it works for a woman. Oh, I can see where this is distorted because it presumes a reality for everybody that isn't true for everybody." That's what it's been like. It's been oddly liberating. I liberated an aspect of myself I never knew I could or would, and actually was so buried in instinct I didn't even know wasn't liberated. Because I've always, I'm Italian, I talk, but I didn't know that there were certain invisible puppet strings inside of my own consciousness that were keeping me from saying things.
Yeah, when you were speaking, I could feel my response to the sadness of being profoundly misunderstood. Like to be a person who's like spent your life investigating freedom and really wanting that for others.
Right.
And then to be portrayed as something that, like it's dirty or it's abusive. It's like so much the inverse of what your motivation was, the ultimate not being met.
So inverse.
Oof.
Right. It's so inverse, and I had to grow into a kind of psychic maturity. Oh, life isn't fair. You hear that. Life isn't fair. Life isn't fair. But there's still some ground of belief that I had that if you had good intentions and you did your best, that you would be protected. No, it doesn't work that way.
I'm a good
It doesn't.
person, but I'm a good person.
Exactly. Exactly. What you get is the opportunity to develop resilience. That's your blessing. But you don't get, the big bodyguards in the sky don't come and protect you from anything.
Come on. I want the big bodyguards in the sky.
Trust me, I really.
Well, let's hope the angels are with you of whatever size they are.
Right.
Do you have anything else that you want to cover? I just adore you. I'm really, this whole situation is unbelievable to me. It's just, it's not really unbelievable. I've been doing Rosebud for all these years and I couldn't advertise. I would getting, I had this shame response when they wouldn't allow my ads, like, what do you mean? You think I'm doing something dirty? I'm just giving people, I was like, what? I really couldn't even compute in the beginning. And then I was like, oh, the world is very different than I thought it was. And so I was also, awakened from my own bubble.
That's
a little bit.
That's it. And see, that's the blessing. That disillusionment is the blessing, but oh, what a painful blessing it is.
That's right.
So we began this with you were at an inception point in my life. And I don't take things lightly I don't take things lightly when somebody's there at a key point in my life. But then when I'm at another very salient point in my life and that you're here is a profound gift. And when you've been canceled, you have one of those understandings about the way things work because people think it's contagious. And that you have me on here means so much to me. And that I knew I would come on and be met as a human in so much.
Yeah. Just in terms of thank you, first of all. I don't like cancel culture at all. Mm-hmm. Like in general, it lacks nuance and it lacks personal accountability or finding out the true information. And there's so many tools arrayed against you that it's a fundamental violation of the Sixth Amendment.
Right.
You have a right to a full and complete hearing before you're judged. But media and, people's lascivious narratives, their own hunt, cancels, like it literally puts that justice in bhakti practice. Shravana, the first yoga, is listening, like the deep listening for what is true before you speak at all. And they just, I don't like it.
Yeah. I live in the maybe world, the Zen, where we don't know yet. We still don't know. I know that there was a bet I made because I saw a counterforce to women's power coming. And there were some things that I wanted to ensure were secured immediately. And I believe, as you do, that things work themselves out in the long run. I do think my situation, the bigger situation, will work itself out. But I don't think we could have gotten the practice secured in the world in a post-canceled Me Too world. We couldn't have introduced it. So we got the seeds in, and so then, we'll see from there. We'll just, bit by bit, we keep going. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for planting these rich seeds. And people want to find you. Are you running classes now or no?
I teach every day. Monday through Friday. I teach every day. And they can go on the Eros platform, and then my schedule will be there.
So if you want more of this beautiful woman and her liberating technologies, you can find her on the Eros platform, and I'll put it in the show notes, and maybe we'll speak again.
I would like that very much.
So whether you're thinking about how you can personally hold more sensation in your body, whether it's a physical sensation or an emotional sensation, and ride that wave, how you can take ultimate responsibility for your own experience, and your responses to the stimuli that life throws at you, or whether you're thinking differently about cancel culture or shame or all of the other things we discussed, I'm sure you'll want to find out more about Nicole's work. So please look up on Amazon the Eros Sutras, look at the Eros platform online, and find out for yourself. Let yourself be sovereign and self-directed and self-knowing. All right, you know who you are, the spark of consciousness, the divine light, walking around in a body, having an amazing experience, taking it all in, and showing it to consciousness as only you can. You matter, your stories matter, your life matters, you're a gift.